on you, mate. I would not touch crypto in a million years. Crypto.
The United States will be the crypto capital of the planet. We're all together. We're all one.
Okay, where's the gold?
For the first time in the human race, we have unleashed a freedom virus.
Oh god, why are people listening to me? I'm just a guy.
Welcome everyone to the Top Signal Show, where we break down what's trending across crypto, spotlight the latest trading tools on OKX, and chat with some of the sharpest minds shaping the space. Quick disclaimer before we dive in. Everything shared on this show is for informational purposes only and reflects our guests' own views, not necessarily those of OKX. This is not financial advice. Crypto is risky, so always do your own research. I'm Elizabeth Olson. I'm Director of Product Marketing at OKX, and I'm joined here today with my wonderful co-host, Kamsky, co-founder of Mood Labs, and Erica Lee, journalist and contributor. Apologies for the ambulance noise. I'm in New York City, so it's always a little bit loud. But I'll throw the mic over to Kamsky and put myself on mute while the ambulance is going by. Kamsky, how's it going?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm just having some audio issues, but I just want to say hello. We're super excited to have this is it's the third episode of our Top Signal show, and there you go. My audio is back. All right, now I can hear you all. Sorry, I was like trying to catch. I was trying to catch the cue, but trying to lip read. Unfortunately, it's not my greatest skill. But yeah, I just want to say I'm like super excited about today. We have like so much to the brief. I have so many questions for our guests, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what's happening in the market. So, but before that, I'll hand over to the girls, and yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It just feels like we've been doing this show for so long now, but it's only the third week. Thanks to everyone for joining us in the chat and who have been tuning in every week.
Yeah, it's crazy. Third weekend, we've had the most insane lineup of guests between lot. I mean, what an all-star lineup. Then we had Mert last week, and now we have OG veteran Bitcoiner Dan Held. We're so excited to have him on the show. Honestly, couldn't be better timing with Bitcoin tipping below 100K yesterday for the very first time, I think, since May. So yeah, we're really excited to have him on here. I think we all need a little bit of Bitcoin hopium. He's been holding Bitcoin for over a decade, and has so many word stories about that. I really would love to know what his um, how he's able to have the guts to hold for so long, and yeah, and what that might look like in terms of where we're at right now in the cycle. Are we going lower? Is this just a little dip before or before something larger where we're gonna see a big pump ahead of 2026? Or is the cycle over? We don't know, but maybe Dan can share a little bit of insight there. Again, none of this show is financial advice, but it's always interesting to look at different patterns and study and educate ourselves around where we might be at in the cycle. But yeah, with that said, Erica, I'll go ahead and throw the mic over to you for our macro update. What are some trends that are driving us this week, and maybe some top signals on what we should be looking at?
Yeah, just like you mentioned before, unfortunately, Bitcoin dipped under 100K for the first time in about 132 days. The market isn't looking the best right now, just being honest. So I'll just kind of give a quick overview about that. Market sentiment isn't great. Many reasons for that. The government shutdown, the US government shutdown has been probably the longest. Actually, it is the longest in history, 36 days. Another reason for this market sentiment is US China relations, a trade war started by the tariffs, and also the Fed chair saying that the rate cut isn't guaranteed for December. So a lot of things that are contributing to this as a whole. But people who have been through multiple cycles say that they've been through worse, and that it's just a reset and not a reversal. So people like Dan that we're going to talk to today, he's been through stuff like this, and so he'll have a lot to say about that, and we can still be optimistic. Last week we passed Sol ETF, VSOL, it's almost breakpoint, and so there's a lot to look forward to. Most people are comfy in stables right now, just waiting for the market to get better before they trade on leverage. And so yeah, I think it's the reality right now. But for people who are optimistic about crypto, it's the bottom. And so we had a
Erica's calling the bottom. What?
yeah, not financial advice though, just like Elizabeth said. But if we have people saying that it's the bear market, and I just don't feel like that's true, and at least not completely. And so yeah, so the trenches are a little bit dead, but it's okay. I think that there's still a lot to look forward to. So Kamsky is going to tell us a lot more about what trenches are like and what crypto Twitter is like.
We might have a lag with Kamsky. I'm gonna cue her. I'm gonna back channel and cue her. Here we go.
Oh, sorry, okay. You go. Yeah, so as Erica was saying, it's been a little bit tough. We're going through a little bit of a tough moment. It definitely feels like crypto's not trading at the price it is, that we're far lower than that. The trenches have been quite dry over the last few days. But however, we still have some juicy news to share with you. And let's first start with, obviously there's been a little fatigue in the market. On-chain coins have been struggling a lot. We've covered the X402 meta, which is enabling AI agents to make crypto payments online pretty much. And that is, obviously we looked at some coins last week, and this week, unfortunately, they suffered as well. Although we have to say there's been quite, there's one leader that's emerging in that, and that is Virtuals. It did pump a little bit. It was shielded by Andrew Kang. And yes, I can. I can also like show you guys pretty much how it looks on the OKX DEX. So you can have a look on. You can basically have a look at all the on-chain markets that you have. Let me screen share for you. Just 1 second.
Yeah,
There
Andrew
you
Ping
go.
is very, very base. So if he says something, it's
So
good.
OKX has a
Most likely.
really cool DEX feature where it basically aggregates a lot of coins. You get the best of all worlds pretty much if you look at what is happening here. It's really quick. Fees are great. And it's easy to trade on chain thanks to basically the DEX feature. So this is virtual. Let me remove all this, which these, by the way, are really cool. If you want to see like who's in, they're tracking like KOLs. You can track so influencers and insiders. You can see if the dev has sold. So this is like really good to see, especially if you're trading low caps. If you know a coin is going to survive, if the dev is selling, that might not necessarily be a really good good like point, so better get out. But in this case, we're just going to remove that to have a clearer overview. So if you see, this is like a virtuals chart. If you don't know what this coin is, you can have a look at the AI insights. They tend to be really good to just give you information on like what's happening pretty much with this coin, so that it can help you basically do research, especially if you're trading low caps. This info needs to be quick, right? There's also Vibe Score that's like really cool. It tracks sentiment, for the coin. So if the sentiment's positive and rising, this, reflects in this number. So that's also something I like to look at. And yeah, I mean, given the market right now, this how the chart looking, it's holding pretty okay. It's other X402 coins. I cannot say the same, but there's also other things that pretty much have happened. I think like CZ Shield Aster on Twitter again, unfortunately didn't sustain the pump as a lot of people wanted. We finally have the official Monad mainnet date. Hallelujah.
Yay.
I know Erica's like really excited about this one. It's going to be on November 24th at 9 a.m. ET. So yeah, I think that's like one of the things that people are really excited at the moment, that I can say, are lifting the spirits given like what we've been going through. There's also an interesting play on Solana called OR right now. Believe Launchcoin Eco is catching there's a lot of FUD towards Ben Pasternak. I think also it restart every time his girlfriend like tweets something. I think that kind of like adds fuel to the fire. I think she posted something with them in bed with a Birkin bag. A lot of people are saying he's funding her lifestyle, though she's a really well-known YouTuber and creator. So that's something that
successful
like,
in her own right. She can buy her own Birkin bags.
Yeah. And then obviously we cannot not mention the balancer hack. It's I think they were like over 116 millions pretty siphoned out, and there have been rumors that the hacker was vibe coding this attack because he left a trail of AI slob. Is this confirmed? Let me know in the chat. Yeah, that's pretty crazy when these things happen. This has been like a really solid player and apparently outstanding. So, and had gone through a lot of auditing done. So pretty crazy. And then again, this weekend, like Polymarket and, all prediction market platforms have been in the spotlight given, sports events and elections. I know Elizabeth, you're in New York, you probably went to vote, and so did people on the internet. So that's definitely one of the things. And also we had one of the largest sports markets with over 80 million volume. Now, I'm European, so I don't really follow so much like what's happening in the US, but I should probably start paying attention because a lot of people are trading these markets. And I think like Kalshi did like 4.4 billion in volume last month. I know I saw like they did some activations as well in the city, in the metro about elections. Like these platforms really push and capitalize on these big moments, and it's very interesting to see everybody participate.
Yeah, and it also looks like Pump Fund changed their banner to something, and people are like speculating around what it actually means. Maybe I'll share my screen, you guys can kind of see it. Seen a lot of Pepe around here, some house coins, some what is this, Tokabu?
There's the troll.
Oh, there's the robot. Yeah, I mean, it's just like basically all the trending metas and things that are kind of happening right now in the space. So yeah, TBC. Yeah. So I don't know. Chat, what do you think it means? We're speculating ourselves. We're not really sure. But in the meantime, would love to remind everyone, if you can, let's see, I want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. So I'll reshare my other screen. I want to make sure everybody's aware of our ongoing boost campaigns. We're about to bring up our guest speaker, Dan Held, in about 1 minute, 30 seconds or so. But just a reminder that we have ongoing boost campaigns with different partners. You can do participate in trading competitions and different giveaways. And yeah, just always be on the lookout for different partners we're launching things with. I actually just this morning had a call with a really, really exciting partner who might be doing a boost campaign very soon with us. So yeah, excited to see if we can announce it potentially as early as next week for next week's special guest. But yeah, we have an amazing lineup of guests. And yeah, with that said, I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and yeah, we'll get Dan up on the show today. So Dan Held is a true OG Bitcoiner. We are so lucky to have him on our show today. He's been in the space for over a decade. He actually has also not only been in the crypto space, but actually led growth at Uber. He served as head of marketing at Kraken and helped shape early crypto products at blockchain.com. He also launched his own company startup, Zero Block. So that was acquired, and then he went on to blockchain.com and then all these other different incredible companies. So he's really a mastermind when it comes to growth and marketing, but also runs his own Bitcoin-focused fund, Asymmetric. He's an advisor to many different companies and is really one of the most trusted voices in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And last but not least, one of the leaders of the Taproot Wizards. So, which I believe we are all a part of and have attended many Taproot Wizard events in the past. So yeah, we're just so thrilled to have Dan with us today. I know we're going to be bringing him up very shortly. Maybe I'll just ping him to see if he's backstage. But yeah, he's been also just a wonderful friend to myself as well. I feel like I've seen Dan at so many different conferences now, and we always ended up at the same events. So it's always been good to been a good friend. And Dan, we're so excited to have you here. Kamsi, do you see him backstage?
Yes, let me bring him on. All right.
Good morning.
Hey,
welcome.
Is GM still a thing? GM.
Yeah, GM, G Meow. I mean, I feel like with you, it's always going to be G Meow, right? From Quantum Chaos era. So we'll always have a G Meow. Dan, we are so happy to have you here. I feel like my intro could have gone on for like 10 minutes because you've worn so many hats. It's pretty insane. But I kept it brief. I first of all, like, feelings check-in. How are you doing? Bitcoin below 100K. A lot of sentiment is down, but I mean, for you, this is not your first time in the rodeo. Not first time in the Bitcoin roller coaster here. It's been mostly below 100K for the time that you've been holding, which is over 10 years, right? So yeah, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of angst right now of people feeling like, are we in a bear? Are we in a bull? Bear markets, if you know you're in a bear, you can kind of just hunker down and just deal with it. But I think there was a lot of expectations around this bull run, especially around the price, and people expected it to be, at $400,000 a Bitcoin. So, I've been reading a lot of different books on essentially like where you derive fulfillment and happiness from. And what an interesting theme is that it's usually the delta between your expectations and what actually occurred. Like that dictates what your happiness is. And so I think everyone right now is very unhappy because their expectations were so high. What's funny is that like we're at $100,000 a Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin, what was it at? $15,000 a Bitcoin just a year and a half ago. So like, it's all about expectations. Life is really all about that. I think people's expectations were very, very high, but Bitcoin is still quite successful. We're still in an incredibly strong, I would say, macro environment from a macro being. We can talk about Fed and liquidity and stuff like that, but in terms of politics, in terms of liquidity, in terms of market structure, in terms of institutional validation. Like Bitcoin has never been in a better spot. We have to remember that during the Biden regime, we were essentially under persecution. Democrats really hated crypto and really tried to kill it. So we couldn't be in a better spot politics wise. You look at you got JP Morgan, like Jamie Dimon, who's been shitting on Bitcoin for a decade, finally come around to talking positively about it. I mean, these are all incredibly bullish things structurally. And so I think a lot of people focus short term on the price, and they're just not happy because their Bitcoin bags didn't pump, 2x in a month. So for me as a long-term investor, I couldn't be happier where we're at now. When Bitcoin is $10, they could have easily squashed us. And so to see it actually succeed, like I think Bitcoin has succeeded in this case, to see it succeed is immensely, I'm immensely proud of the fact that we got all the way here. So I think context is critical here as people kind of fret and worry about current price action. Just remember, Bitcoin is 6 digits. I mean, that's kind of unfathomable for early OGs to even think that Bitcoin would hit $100,000 someday. And then the fact that like the president of the United States is positively tweeting about Bitcoin. I mean, that's incredible. And of course, I've got my issues with him as a president, but like that's pretty cool versus what we've had historically. So yeah, I want to set that framing just to give everyone perspective. I think a lot of people are fretting. And then when we look at the price action too, like Bitcoin's all-time high, what was that, around 125,000-ish? I mean, we're not down that bad. In a bull run, if you look at how the bull run occurs, it's not this straight line up. It's a wavy line with a bunch of different dips along the way. And usually the end of a bull run is when you see irrational exuberance. Well, the price goes really high. People talk about the price never ending, never stop going up. Your cousin, your niece, your nephew, your random friend from high school texting you, hey, should I buy XRP? That sort of crap. We didn't really see much of that this cycle. And so that's where I don't think we've seen that like blow off top or top of the cycle, because there wasn't that much exuberance. We didn't really see frothiness occur in this market. Like all we saw was kind of a nice slow bleed up. So for me, like, I don't think we're out of the bull run yet. I think that if we look at, we didn't see a blow off top. We didn't see huge retail participation. Bitcoin's trading like a higher beta NASDAQ. If we see, confidence come back to the markets in like tech and equity, like tech equities, we'll probably see Bitcoin skyrocket. So all of that being said, I'm still very long Bitcoin, of course. I'm still hodling. So for me, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I think that's the best representation, in my opinion, is if I'm still hodling or not, which I'll be hodling until my dying days.
Do you think the 4-year cycle thesis is broken? Because we are kind of coming close to an end, right? Like the fundamentals are a little bit changed. And, if you, depending who you speak to, a lot are saying we're going to be going in for a bear right now following this 4-year cycle pattern. So is that still in place, or are we in a different place right now?
Yeah, there's a famous saying that history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And so I would say there will always be cycles in Bitcoin, just like there will always be cycles in markets. Human beings are still the people behind the levers of buying and selling different assets, and they will always have fear and greed. And so that will dictate, exuberant cycles, bull runs, and bear market, fearful sort of parts of the cycle as well. So that's not going to change. The question is it going to be 4 years again, or will it be longer or shorter? I do think that might structurally change a bit, where we've got a lot of people looking at Bitcoin, both on the institutional front and retail front, where we could see something like more mild bull runs and more mild winters. So for example, we might see Bitcoin here pull back a little bit. And let's say hypothetically this is the end of the cycle, which I don't think it is, but let's say it's the bear. Maybe the bear only dips to 80 and then chops sideways for a year and a half. And then it goes from, 80 back up. Things like that. Like, I don't think, if we didn't have the exuberant, irrational sort of blow off top where Bitcoin 10x's, 100x's, if we don't have that happen, then it also makes me feel like on the way down, I don't see as much fear being in the market, because there's not as many folks selling, because they're not, people weren't just buying just for a quick pump. They were buying because they believe in the long-term vision. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't think it's the end of cycles. It could be the end of the 4-year cycle. And if it is, I think the cycles will largely be more muted, both on the way up and on the way down.
Which needs to happen if you're selling crypto to retail, the way institutional banks are offering right now. If you want to sell it to mom and pops and a grandma, like, it needs to stable up in some kind of way. Sorry, Erica, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah, no, thanks. That's a great question and great answer. Thanks, Dan. How did you get orange pilled in general? You're obviously very passionate about it and you're a trusted voice in this space. What got you started?
So for me, I was studying finance in undergrad during the 2008 financial crisis. So when you're studying finance and you realize that your books are wrong, the professors are wrong, and everyone on TV is wrong, it sort of radicalizes you. So I got radicalized from that, became pretty anti-state, anti-government, anti-institutions. Went down the rabbit hole of libertarian ideology and became a gold bug. Becoming a gold bug naturally, because that's all there was in 2008. So going down that path, your mind is somewhat open to the idea that, like, there could be an alternative money that's not controlled by government. In addition, I did a lot of torrenting. So torrenting is a peer-to-peer file sharing system where you can download movies and TV shows. And it was quite resilient, right? It still exists today, where governments can't really shut it down. So for me, I sort of saw the firsthand effect of P2P networks, and then I understood the existing problems with the traditional financial system. And so when I heard about Bitcoin, it was the right environment for that idea to kind of, to land and be able to be understood. Now, granted, it took me about a year to really get it. At first, I'm like, my buddy paid me back for a beer with a Cassatius coin, those little gold coins. And the first thing I tried to do was sell it, right? Like, as Mark Twain puts it, to make a man or woman covet something, to want it, all you have to do is make it hard to obtain. If you don't make it hard to obtain and you don't value it, then you could care less if it's Bitcoin or Chuck E. Cheese tokens.
And supply and demand.
Scarcity is value, yeah.
Which is also why I stopped gifting people Bitcoin a long time ago, because most of them
Good choice.
sold it. Yeah.
Good. Today, in hindsight, very good choice.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few who held on to it, part of it, but almost no one holds on to it because they don't value it, which makes sense. Anyways, so I took this Cassatius coin and I started to read up on it, and private key management back then was pretty tough. There wasn't the 12-word backup that came with BIP39. That came in 2014, I think. So your backup, like your private key, had to print out your private key and then clear your printer cache to make sure it wasn't saved in there. So, private key management was super tough. The only non-custodial, there weren't hardware wallets at the time. They're also like, blockchain.com is the kind of best non-custodial web wallet. Even web wallet was kind of a new term. So web wallet would be like you log into a website, and where the encrypted wallet DAT file for blockchain.com, that was stored in their cloud, and then it would decrypt it in the browser, which meant that blockchain.com didn't have access to your private key. They just had your encrypted private key. So, the use back then was really, really complicated. Like, it was super tough to use. Back then too, buy Bitcoin, you'd have to wire money to Mt. Gox. And so with Mt. Gox, you had to use a service called Dwolla. And then it would take like almost a week where you had to send money to Dwolla and then Dwolla to Mt. Gox. Took forever. I had never wired money before in my life. I was like 24 years old. I barely had, I didn't have that much money too, right out of college. And so I'm sending, thousands of dollars over to Japan and then I didn't even know how an order book worked. So I'm like, okay, I just want to buy this thing. Like, what the hell is an order book? And so that whole process was super complicated. Coinbase coming around at that time was huge because it was, people forget that Coinbase was a brokerage, not an exchange. Luckily for us in history, because history could have been a whole lot different, Coinbase was sourcing their liquidity from Bitstamp, not Mt. Gox. Because when Mt. Gox collapsed, that was like 95% of the market. And if Coinbase had been using Mt. Gox, then Coinbase might have died. So,
Wow.
yeah, there's so many near misses with the Bitcoin world where like Bitcoin could have not died, but like its growth could have been severely diminished. And these are the reasons why I'm so excited and happy today, is because like I've seen all these moments where these near misses, sort of like human civilization, like near misses with asteroids, like we could have been wiped out, but we didn't. It's awesome to see that we're here today, but I feel like I'm ranting at this point, so I'll kick it back to you guys.
No, yeah, actually, I'm really curious, Dan, because speaking of like the opposite of a miss, a catch is the whole Bitcoin treasury strategy, right? I guess you're probably friends with Michael Saylor. I think I saw you were at his New Year's Eve event a couple years ago. And yeah, just kind of curious, like, what do you think about MicroStrategy? Or have you yourself been really excited about this whole model? And do you think more companies should be adopting it and going in this direction? Or do you think it's like a trap and it could be kind of like a slow bubble burst over time? And yeah, I mean, I think without doubt, it's certainly been driving up the Bitcoin price this past cycle, or ongoing cycle, hopefully ongoing. So yeah, just kind of curious, what's your take on treasury companies?
Yeah, so I've got a fun one-liner on this, but call me old-fashioned. But if you want to buy Bitcoin, just buy Bitcoin. I'm not a huge advocate for them. I think I don't dislike them. I think what they're doing is good for Bitcoin, but I wouldn't push a market participant, like AKA a consumer, to go buy MicroStrategy or any of these. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, just buy Bitcoin. If you want to get levered with that, because basically most of these strategies for like MicroStrategy or some of these other treasury companies, it's basically a levered bet on Bitcoin. If you want to do a levered bet on Bitcoin, just kind of do it yourself if you like. I don't recommend doing that. Bitcoin's super volatile. You'll be stressed out. I just buy Bitcoin, the asset itself, and just hodl is your best, return per unit of risk and return per unit of sanity. It's the space is kind of crazy. So, if you can't, basically, if you can survive the volatility, you'll make quite a bit of money. But if you can't survive the volatility, that's an issue. Morgan Housel, who wrote the book, The Psychology of Money, has a really good, succinct thought on debt or margin positions, which I like, that it's not a good or bad thing. It just increases your fragility, which means that market swings could hurt you, especially on the way down. So yeah, debt isn't a bad or good thing. It just decreases your ability to stomach losses or stomach high volatility moments. These treasury companies, MicroStrategy will be fine. They're the biggest, best capitalized, earliest entry point, etc. Strategy is going to be okay in a bear market. The other ones, I'm not so sure. And Nick Carter did a really cool investigative research into, I forget what these companies were called in the 1920s. So in the roaring 20s, there were entities created just like these treasury companies where they would go buy equities. And so if you bought their equity, they were a holding company for other equities. And so people would speculate, and basically they use the same mechanic. They'd issue debt and other convertible notes, et cetera, to then purchase more equity inside their holdings. Very similar. I forget what they were called, but Nick had a really good write-up on that. These are almost identical instruments. Usually they're reflexive. So reflexivity means that it compounds on the way up and compounds on the way down. So on the way down, some of these companies could be forced to sell, and that could be pretty bearish on the way down in this market. Again, strategy, they have really long duration debt instruments. They're going to be fine, but everyone else I think is a little bit more fragile. Regarding Saylor and his work in Bitcoin, Saylor and I have spent a good amount of time together. I was at his New Year's Eve party this year, and him and I had dinner together quite a few times. Saylor is he has an extremely strong conviction in Bitcoin, where he's developed that over years. And for him, this is somewhat of like a go big or go home, I think. I appreciate his conviction with it, where he's like, well, if I think this is the trade to end all trades, I'm going to go all in. And so he's basically going all in as much as you could. And he sort of figured out a hack with the existing financial system where publicly traded companies have access to different types of financial instruments that allow him to borrow at really low rates. So he's able to utilize that in order to buy more Bitcoin and somewhat he's basically doing a speculative, we used to call this back in the 17 era, a speculative attack on the dollar, where you try to borrow as many dollars as you can in the hopes that, the other asset, Bitcoin, goes up, and then you pay back the dollars, when you're with basically like the dollars have lost value due to inflation and due to them being repriced against the other asset. You could do speculative attacks, of course, like using gold, for example, where you borrow as many dollars as you can and you buy gold, which is sound money, same with Bitcoin, and then eventually pay back the weaker money with a much more devalued, with much less of it. So in terms of like you sell less of the hard asset to pay back the inflated dollars. So I think Saylor's a good actor in the space. I think he acts with integrity. But I wouldn't recommend that the average person go buy Strategy or any of these treasury companies.
Right. Thanks for that. It's definitely something that's been, popping off, and sometimes retail doesn't necessarily understand the risk. And, you also, with Asymmetric, you invest in company in the space. So you definitely have a really interesting position into companies and founders and how teams are performing and, don't perform in some kind of way. So I wanted to ask, like, what kind of companies, because you've also invested in Bitcoin companies. So since the Ordinal protocol was launched, there's a whole ecosystem that flourished on Bitcoin, such as Ordinals, you have Runes, BRC20s, and so on, many meta protocols that have like emerged. And these are definitely some of the companies in your portfolio. So we're curious in terms of like, what are the companies that you are actually excited for, to come? Is there any actually on Bitcoin right now? Because obviously it's been a little rough. What are the kind of projects that your fund is looking into or would like to see, if you can speak of any?
Yeah, so I love all my children equally. So for all of my portfolio companies, I love all of what they're doing. The Asymmetric Bitcoin DeFi Venture Fund, what we focus on are DeFi projects on top of Bitcoin. So that could be a layer 2, a staking protocol, and a meta protocol, or a DApp, so a decentralized application. Some of these, for example, would be like Liquidium. Liquidium allows you to borrow Bitcoin using your Ordinal as collateral. So that's a prime example of like a lending borrowing market on Bitcoin base layer. So we're investors in Liquidium, SatLayer. SatLayer is a similar type, kind of like DEX using Ordinals. Then we have companies like Botanix, Mezzo, BitLayer. Those are Bitcoin L2s. Same with like Bob, for example. Those are all L2s that we've invested in. And then meta protocols wise, like Arch. Arch we're really, really excited about. So, for us, we believe that this isn't a winner take all sort of market. Like we didn't see that happen with Ethereum DeFi or Solana DeFi. Like we see emergent leaders and some of them come and go. But for us, we think that, if the directional investment thesis of Bitcoin DeFi is a thing, we've placed bets across both L1s, which is meta protocols, for example, or dApps in L1, and L2s. We think both will be valuable. And we think that, for example, as transaction fees rise in the Bitcoin base layer, that'll price out some of the Ordinals and meta protocol transactions because they become really expensive. And that activity will likely be pushed to an L2. So, we sort of see a equilibrium being found between activity on the L1 versus L2 based on transaction fees. And we're not, I think, equipped to think that far ahead of, well, how exactly will that look in terms of what activity will occur? Obviously, the lower priced items will be priced out, so people have to wrap that asset and bring it to an L2. But we're sort of like, we're confident in the direction. We're confident in the teams that we have bet on, but we are of course uncertain exactly how that all unfolds. And so we've made bets to, I would say, kind of broadly bet on the category. We also don't believe, like I said before, in winner take all. So we don't believe in like picking category winners. So for example, we've invested in quite a few L2s because we invest in teams, smart people. We think that it's both the technology stack plus their marketing that will allow them to succeed. So that's our thesis on the Bitcoin DeFi world, and that represents what our portfolio consists of currently and what we're interested in.
You mentioned ordinals. Are they dead, or are we gonna see a new ordinals bull market at some point? It's a big question. People have been asking, and
yeah.
And clearly, Luke Joshua wants to see them gone. Apparently, he put out a proposal a couple weeks back on having literally a forking Bitcoin so that there can't be any transactions that are not only purely financial transactions, I guess, which is pretty ironic because literally the first Bitcoin transaction that Satoshi himself did had an ordinal of sorts in it with the newspaper clipping, right? So it doesn't seem very aligned with Bitcoin culture. Obviously, we all have our own ideas how Bitcoin should be used. But anyway, yeah, I mean, can't get rid of ordinals, but what are your take on how they've evolved?
Yeah. So one is, will human beings continue to speculate on scarce items that are collectibles? Yes, of course they will. Obviously we've seen a lot of that interest drop, which, by the way, ordinals became hot during a bear market. So I consider that to be pretty bullish that it even had any interest at all, because NFTs on Ethereum are dead. So, ordinals started in a bear market, which also I think is good for like price action because people have entered like pretty low floor prices. And if the market gets really speculative, then everyone's going to look like it's going to look great chart wise. Once interest comes back, speculative interest comes back into Bitcoin, then speculative interest will flow back into things like ordinals and Bitcoin DeFi and altcoins, et cetera. But until Bitcoin spot doesn't, until Bitcoin spot has its run, then we're not going to see that happen with everything else. So Bitcoin's got to go first, and then everything else will follow. What was the second part of the question? So we talked about like ordinals dead or not, but there was another question there too.
I think it was just if we're gonna
like around the.
Will we be able to see another bull run in ordinals soon?
Yeah,
Hopefully.
and I think, by the way, NFTs on Bitcoin are actually a more pure play than NFTs on Ethereum because NFTs on Bitcoin actually exist on chain versus like on Ethereum, a lot of times they point to an IPFS file or there's like a hash of the image. I think that's quite beautiful. Also, the idea that like I'm etching into digital gold images is pretty cool. It's almost like jewelry in a way. Also, to mint or create them requires quite a bit of money. So I think it concentrated the number of projects into a much more proof of work oriented NFT marketplace. Whereas like on Ethereum, you can just spin up and create thousands of NFTs. So I think that, and it's on the mother chain, the Bitcoin chain. So I think all of those things lead to, I think NFTs on Bitcoin will be bigger than NFTs on Ethereum. And so for me, and also, by the way, NFTs are a unique asset type. And I don't know why the Bitcoin Puritan maxis get all crazy about this stuff, but like, it's a distinctly different asset. Like just because people make jewelry out of gold doesn't make gold any less valuable. Also, like, is jewelry competitive? Gold jewelry is a display of store of value, and similar with the Bitcoin NFT. Also, like NFTs are a unique asset type that are not competitive with sound money. Like NFTs are not trying to compete. Like art behind me, like this art doesn't compete with the dollar. It's kind of like a nonsense sort of thing to be worried about. But yeah, I think NFTs were a unique asset type that are truly, and actually going down the NFT rabbit hole, you start to have an appreciation for a lot of other collectibles, and you start to appreciate why people collect things. It's very like, if you've read Nick Szabo's The Origins of Money, money probably started as collectibles before it became any sort of like fungible asset. So like collectibles being proof of work oriented collectibles around like shells or beads, because of the costliness or the time to create them made them valuable. Of course, the shared aggregate an illusion of value between market participants or humans are what allowed it to be traded. But collectibles were probably the origins of money.
Hopefully,
Dan, you've
Luke.
quoted a lot of books this stream. You've done a lot of memorizing off the dome. Is there a favorite quote about markets or about Bitcoin that you really like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch, but one I like that I've kind of, I don't know if I've coined it or if I pulled this together from multiple people, so I'm not going to lay claim to it, but I haven't heard it mentioned this way specifically, is that a lot of people lament that the efficient market hypothesis is broken. That like, okay, well, markets moved, therefore the efficient market hypothesis isn't predictive. Well, the efficient market hypothesis is not predictive, it's descriptive. It's just describing the current market and how people are valuing something. So with that, markets are priced in for people who are paying attention. And that's an important caveat here, is that a lot of people don't pay attention. Bitcoin was open source and anyone could buy it anywhere in the world and learn about it literally anywhere. You could be on a mobile phone in Africa reading about Bitcoin. You could have been a banker in London or New York. Anyone could have learned about it. And the only edge I had was because I was fucking paying attention. That's it.
Yeah.
Like,
Is
and
that
that's
why
what's
you
so
named?
crazy.
Is that why you named asymmetric the way you did because of information?
Well, it's not my firm. I run one of the funds within the firm. So I didn't brand that. That was Joe McCann. But I like Asymmetric's branding. I think it's, asymmetric, the name is really fun because these asymmetric opportunities exist and, how do you capitalize on that? And so what I realized, developing my own investment thesis larger than just Bitcoin itself, or looking at my experience in Bitcoin and being like, well, why was I right? Because there's probably a lot of times I would have been wrong around another investment, right? And I've been wrong about a lot of things, but why was I right about Bitcoin is because I spent a year reading up on it. I spent tons of time digging in. And what I realized too is like, not only are people not paying attention, but I went all the way down the rabbit hole. It's pretty much as far as you could go. And I'm like, how many people have gone down to this level of rabbit hole? And how many people will go down this rabbit hole in the future? And if I believe a lot of other people in the future will, they'll probably come to the same conclusion I did and buy Bitcoin. So,
Yeah.
Markets are not priced in. Markets are just being priced in by people who are paying attention. And so, I've extrapolated the same investment thesis framework. And by the way, you've got to hold on to things for a really long time to see this come into fruition. So, my hold periods for any asset type is 10 years. So this is my learned experience from being a Bitcoin hodler, which I'm obviously still hodling the vast majority of my net worth in Bitcoin. Because I think that's the best return per unit of risk of any asset. But, I have, like, for example, when I worked at Kraken, I earned Kraken equity and I sold some of that and I bought other assets like S&P 500 or SpaceX. So, for example, SpaceX outside of Bitcoin is my largest investment. And I spent a year and a half developing that thesis back in 2020 and then bought it back then. So
Yeah, Dan,
go ahead.
go ahead. No. Close your thought.
Yeah. So, with any sort of investment thesis, you have to, I think, very carefully spend your time really understanding, what is this investment? How is it being priced in? What is my long-term belief in it? And assets on the very long term are mispriced to a huge degree. Bitcoin, obviously, when I got in at $10, being 100,000, that's a 10,000x return.
It's wild.
The asset was enormously mispriced. Yeah. It's also tough to hodl that long and, you see your net worth at a zero and then not want to sell, right? So, and obviously I don't live forever. So at some point I will be selling some when I need to do certain things in life, like buy a home or something else like that. But, it's hard to, because a lot of people, who got in early, a lot of them sold early too. I know a guy who had 1,000 Bitcoin. So he had 1,000 Bitcoin and price went, from $10 to 1,200 in 2013, and then it went down to 200. And at 200, he was really feeling sad and lamenting, I should have sold. He wasn't a true believer. He didn't really understand the asset. He was just trying to basically day trade it. That's what most OGs were, just trying to day trade it. They weren't true believers at all. And so then when it went back up in 2016 to $1,000, he sold all of it.
Rough.
Right. Because he never really understood the investment. And that I think is a cardinal sin for investing, is like, if you don't understand your investment, then what the hell are you doing? You're just day trading at that point. So whatever you're investing in, remember, investing and trading are completely different things. Trading is like a very active, I'm going to try to find alpha in some sort of short-term movement, versus investing, which is like a long-term hodl. I'm a terrible trader, good investor. And so, a lot of people just never really understood Bitcoin. They never really got it. And I'm like, how could you sell it all? You never, were you even in this space? Did you really even understand what we were doing? Now I understand too, like, for example, let's say you have a bad medical diagnosis and you're like, I want to use my money. Or if your wife or husband is like, hey, we need to buy a house, we got a kid on the way. I get that, but he didn't need to, he just sold because he didn't believe. So yeah, with any investment thesis, when I enter the position, I have an exit in terms of, I have an investment thesis and how long will I hold this, which is over a decade, and what do I think the valuation will be then, and then also, like, when will I start to take money off the table?
Can you share with
money off the
us?
table.
Sorry, no, continue. I'll go with the question.
Yeah, and taking money off the table just merely means more of like, some of these I plan on holding Bitcoin almost my entire life, but obviously I'll die someday, so I have to sell some at a future date. And same with SpaceX as well. So it's a basically how long do I plan on holding it, and then when will I start to rotate out of the asset and rotate into more like long-term diversified positions. Like for me, the S&P 500 is my cash. Like that's my least risky asset bucket.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
for Bitcoin,
my
do you have
friend
a
also big? Oh, I was just gonna say, my friend who's also a big Bitcoin holder, he basically says his philosophy is that he only sells when he needs to buy something. Like if he needs to put an investment down for a house or whatever, some sort of big other investment where it's going to really change his lifestyle. Otherwise, he's just hodling through life. Would you say you have sort of a similar philosophy for the way you hodl?
Yeah, I've actually spent the last year and a half thinking about how to spend money, because to make this much money, you have to really, really disconnect your consumption with your, how much wealth you have. Because obviously you could have lifestyle inflation where you meet your wealth and all of a sudden you're spending a lot because you've got a lot. But if you are able to disconnect that, your wealth keeps compounding. However, I am 37 and I spent a lot of time thinking about, well, how does one enjoy money to its fullest? And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, how do I spend my money in terms of how much joy does it bring me? Obviously I think a lot of people could, some people are really stingy where they're like, especially guys that like live on a mattress, and you look at their apartment, it's horrible, and I don't live that way. I have a nice place, but it's something where, for example, with Bitcoin long-term, how do you think about selling your position if you've been in for over a decade? And something I've thought about is like, okay, well, maybe I take my lifespan, which probably is going to be 50 years or so, and then take my Bitcoin holding and divide it by my years left. And maybe that's as many Bitcoin as that I'll sell per year. And so it's kind of like this declining sum until I die. That was an interesting sort of thought experiment for myself, where I wouldn't have any regret. I'm not going to regret selling it, because again, I think like someone who's worth $1 billion and they're 65 would probably trade that $1 billion to live a year in my shoes.
Yeah,
so
just enjoy life.
exactly. Yeah. So hodling, and me being a big champion of hodling, I do think like for most people, they're younger and they're in their wealth creation era, where you need to reduce your consumption and hodl onto the asset. There's of course a nuanced take that you don't live forever, so you have to enjoy it someday. And so Morgan Housel also had a new book where he wrote The Art of Spending Money, which I thought he very eloquently walked through the thought process of how you spend money. And I think you would probably line up with a lot of like the Bitcoiner values of spending money just to be flashy and to signal wealth to other people probably won't make you happy. But spending your money to improve your life, to hire the cleaner because you hate cleaning, to get you a slightly bigger apartment because the old one had cockroaches in it and wasn't fun to be around, or to like take your significant other on that trip they've always wanted to take. Those things are, you only live one life, and so it's good to be able to enjoy the money as well. But yeah, it's a very subjective and nuanced line of how much do you spend versus continue to save. And the unfortunate part is that they're both exponentially inversely correlated. So your enjoyment of your money is much more enjoyable when you're younger, and it's inversely proportional to how much net worth you have. Because the longer you don't touch it, the more it compounds and grows larger, but then you're getting older. And so, unfortunately, that's the insidious problem of just aging, is that you have more wealth accumulation, but you can enjoy it less.
It's also a
So, yeah,
mindset. It's a mindset thing, right? If you're not improving your life in various ways, what are you really living an abundant life? Maybe you have a number in your wallet or your bank account, but is that really wealth? They say wealth is in the mind, in the body, and in the spirit as well. So that's also like one thing that you need to make those improvements. And it starts obviously with the mindset, but your environment, you are one with your environment. So if you're not making those changes, it's going to be hard to really get to that point of being fulfilled and being happy, no matter what number. I think you can achieve this state with, obviously, you don't need to make $100 million, but it definitely helps with removing that fear and anxiety that comes with not feeling secure. But once you get to that point, there's definitely things that you can put in place to make that happiness.
And totally agree. I think like what I realized too is that the things that matter most in life are the things you can't buy.
Yeah.
Like that's what matters the most. Time, love, everything else like that. And I think too, like there was a realization as well of like, I've been hodling for forever, and your incrementality of lifestyle past a certain number, and I don't want to throw out numbers because it'll give people speculative fervor on how much Bitcoin I have, but there's really not, after a certain number, there's not much else you can really buy. Like you can go on any vacation you could possibly want. You have one of the nicest homes or apartments in any city in the world. And so then it's like, yeah, sure, you could take private jets, which are a good way to burn money. But really there's not that much incrementality wealth-wise between someone who's 100 millionaire and a billionaire. Like honestly, there's really almost nothing. And people who are worth tens of millions, there's only very small incrementality between them and someone who's worth 100 million or hundreds of millions. And so then you wonder too, and once you get to this moment, you're kind of like, I can't believe that some of these people decided to keep going and not enjoy their money when they were younger. Because I'm like, again, who cares if you're worth $1 billion when you're 60? Like, you can't do a lot of the things that we can all do, And so I think it's weird to see a lot of people not make that decision to enjoy their money when they're younger, and to have made the decision, no, I'm going to continue compounding my wealth for some sort of, I think just, it's this cheap KPI of going, this number is me and my fulfillment and who I am. And I think that like that's pretty toxic in terms of the relationship with their money, is they never really understood what the game was about to begin with, which, as Cami put it, to enjoy life and to live life. So it's weird to see everyone else make that decision, especially like I'm here in New York right now. I'm spending some time here working, but to see the New York City is very much like that, where people just keep working to make that number bigger. And I don't think many have ever asked the question like why, or what's that incremental, amount going to really unlock for my lifestyle.
There's a book, just to close up on this, there's a book that Steve Jobs basically gave to everybody that attended his funeral, and it's called Autobiography of a Yogi. I think if people are looking for answers or just, want to find purpose or understanding, it's a beautiful, beautiful book that can tie very much into this conversation. I don't know if you read it, Dan, but yeah, Erica, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, and it's such a good point. I was just gonna say there's this quote that I really like, or some people are like, I don't remember who said it, but it was like, some people are so poor, all they have is money. So, I mean, not that that doesn't help, but yeah, speaking of which, and people who are flashy, if Bitcoin reaches 200K, just as a fun question, what would be your most unhinged purchase, Dan?
Oh man.
What's your top signal purchase, Dan? We got to know.
Top signal. I mean, oh man, that's well, look, I feel like watches, like there's a particular watch that is stupid expensive, and I've got into watches about a year ago, watches are completely worthless from a utility perspective. I think as a guy, we don't have a lot of styling, right? Like you all can wear earrings, and I'm just not like a necklace person too. So for a guy, a watch is kind of like our distinctive flair. But this watch is stupidly priced. It is a stupid purchase, and so
How
that way,
much is it?
it's like $500,000.
Which brand? Tell us.
Is it the Richard Millie one? I don't know how to say it.
Yeah,
No,
I'm more of a
I wouldn't take you for a Richard Mille kind of guy then.
no.
AP maybe.
I mainly have Pateks, but this is a AP Royal Oak Squilette, which is only 50 were made, and it's a monochromatic skeleton, really beautiful. And I actually saw it in Singapore when I was at the speakers dinner because someone actually had it.
Ooh.
But it's a beautiful watch. I could buy it now too, but it's just kind of like I just feel that it's embarrassingly expensive.
Let us know when you do. That will be our top signal. Let us know, please.
Well, no, we're going to be watching your wrist, and that's when we sell our Bitcoin.
That's the signal,
But-
everybody. If you see
yeah,
me on
yeah.
stage with that, sell your Bitcoin.
But Dan, I know we're about to wrap up in the next few minutes. Obviously, we got to ask you a marketing question, right? Okay, so you've been incredibly right when it comes to Bitcoin. You've also been incredibly right when it comes to marketing, and that's why you're top in demand in the industry for being an advisor. You've worked with Kraken, you've worked with Uber, worked with many other companies. What are some tips? Maybe let's say top 2 tips for other marketing people out there and other builders that can help them improve their work and their business brand.
Yeah. So yeah, with my background, I was growth marketing, product marketing at Uber. Zero Block, the first app I ever built, we basically decompiled how the App Store ranking algorithm worked, and so we ranked #1 for the keyword Bitcoin, and that's what allowed our app to be the #1 app in crypto in 2013.
That's crazy.
So,
SEO.
Yeah, App Store SEO, exactly. And so, and again, I was not formally trained as a marketer. I just found a fascination and an obsession around user acquisition. So I started as a growth marketer, which is user acquisition. And then, of course, in a CMO role, like you oversee product marketing, growth marketing, and brand marketing. But I would say the unanimous thing I've discovered of like who is really good at their job, it's not necessarily your IQ. And sure, like some people are just genuinely smarter than others and they'll always be better just because they have inherently better ability to think through and problem solve. But honestly, like marketing's not rocket science. It's, that a lot of folks can do marketing, but what separates B players and A players are just giving a fuck. Honestly, like if you just care and you wake up every day and you're like, I want to be the best marketer in my specialization. So for example, like how did I figure out, because my specialization was App Store optimization or App Store SEO, how did I figure that out? I obsessed over it. I read everything I could and then I experimented. I experimented with changing things on our App Store page, and then I figured out how the algorithm worked because the inputs I gave then led to certain outputs. And because of that, I was able to become really proficient in App Store optimization, and that's what I led at Uber. So, in Uber, we had 100 million active users. Like that was really cool to experiment and to figure out nuances of how the App Store worked. And for example, in my position at Uber, I went to the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, and I asked them, could you further define the metrics that you have in the App Store developer console? And so I was the only person ever to ask these questions because Apple and Google told me that. And like, for example, do you believe that a first-time unique user install, is that the first time that the user taps the Get button in the App Store? Or is it when the app is fully installed on the device after they tap the Get button? An important nuance, it's actually only when they tap the Get button, but they can hit pause or they can stop it. So I asked the Apple App Store, I'm like, well, what's the app install abandonment rate? And they're like, actually, we don't know. So the entire world is assuming their first-time unique user install is this metric, but actually it's an attempted first-time unique user install. I'm giving this as an example of like, there are levels of going down the rabbit hole. And for every IC, every specialist on my marketing orgs, I expect them to have complete proficiency in their role. And that's what makes an A player. And if you want to be good, and if you are good, by the way, you're going to wake up every day and feel good about yourself at work. You're like, fuck yeah, I am awesome today. Like I am really good at my job, and it makes you feel more stable. because even if you got fired or they had um, all sorts of issues, even if you had that, you could go get a job tomorrow. You could also get paid more because you are good at what you do. And so I think ultimately, like, striving for that will make you happier. It'll make you more money, make you happier, make you more grounded in life. You're not going to feel afraid of getting fired. So what separates people is basically caring, obsessing over your function, and really understanding what it takes to be great. It's not based on IQ or anything else. You don't have to be an Einstein. You just have to care. That, and I would say, a lot of people never take the time to zoom out and understand how their role or how the marketing org itself plugs into other orgs. For example, a common thing I do with my clients is I come in and I go, well, what are our OKRs and KPIs? Basically, what the heck are we measuring as our performance, and how is that tied to the overall performance of the company? Most of the time, they don't have those. Or it's like, yeah, the CEO told us that this was important for the quarter. That's a really bad way to do business, because then you're going to have misalignment of expectations. And you want to make sure that the marketing org is aligned with the overall company. So people are like, yeah, we get why marketing is valuable. They're moving the needle here, and we all agree that moving that needle made sense. Same with your individual function. Understanding, like, cool, I'm heads down doing conversion rate optimization, SEO, paid acquisition. Well, how do you fit within the marketing org? Just focusing on what you focus on and not caring about the rest doesn't really give you a good picture of, why should the CMO give your team more money versus this other team? At Uber, we had to successfully advocate both for resourcing for ourselves, but in relation to, we should get the resources versus someone else because it's higher ROI. And here's why. And a lot of people never spend the time to understand how they fit as a puzzle piece in the larger puzzle. And once you understand that, then you know how to really, advocate for your function, advocate for your salary, and also understand why you're important. And then understand when you're not important too. If your function is not driving a lot of value, I wouldn't expect to be around that much longer. So yeah, those are my kind of 2 cents on what it takes to be a good marketer, both in your role and in how you fit within a marketing org.
That makes total sense, and the passion is so important. You need to really care, because there's so many things. I think as a marketeer, you really need to have you need to be attentive and catch all the details and be OCD focused, but also have this like bird's eye perspective and switch between both. And if you don't really care, it's really hard to make everything work for a duration of time. So about passion, actually. And I know we're coming close to the end of the stream. We cannot close the show without mentioning Taproot Wizards. Obviously, we had a super fun party in Singapore. I have the hat. You can't see it right now, but it's on the back there. I was wondering, like, what are the next plans for Taproot Wizards? What's next? How is the project going? I know you're very passionate about the Wizards, and what can people expect?
Yeah, so Taproot Wizards are one of my oldest clients. They've been my client for 2 years. I actually hit up Udi when they first came out, and I'm like, I believe that Taproot Wizards will be the punks of Bitcoin, because I thought they were so iconic. Far as the artists behind them, they look incredible, and it just mimetically felt like it was very much woven into Bitcoin's culture. People forget that wizard was on the Bitcoin subreddit in 2013.
Yeah, on Reddit. That was so important to
that
the
was
history.
that was part of my cultural history, and I loved the wizard. It was kind of like, it's silly, it's playful, it represented just the kind of silliness of the time. And so, like, I love that mimetically, like, just, it's a really cool part of the culture. And Udi and team him and Eric are brilliant. Udi's surrounded himself with a lot of other really smart folks like Ryan Dale and others. So NFTs were kind of the mimetic propagation of the brand of like, hey, let's go change Bitcoin's culture through memes. And I thought that was really cool and powerful. Underneath that, they've got a really solid technical team that is focusing on what are other things we can build for Bitcoin. So I can't speak on specifics, but NFTs aren't the end game here. NFTs are just part of a larger picture, and I think that's much more exciting. I think if Taproot Wizards is just focused on NFTs, that is cool, but I don't think it with such a talented team, I don't think it really fits into what they could ultimately achieve. So there's some cool things on the horizon. I can't talk about it, but definitely with a team like that, you know that they're going to be working on something much bigger.
Well, Dan, we really appreciate you being on the show today. We've also really loved all the Tapper Wizards parties. They've been pretty epic. We've always had a good time there. I know we're at time, so yeah, I just want to say one last question. What's one hill you'd die on about Bitcoin, no matter what this cycle brings? Last bit of hopium for all of us.
A hill I'd die on. Trying to think. Okay, well, yeah. So for the payments-oriented people, a lot of people are lamenting that Bitcoin isn't being used as money. Hodling Bitcoin is using Bitcoin. If you have dollars in your bank account, that doesn't make they're not they're still being dollars. And for some reason, there's this weird thing where people are like, if you're not spending it, you're not using it, and I think that's so absurd. Luckily, a lot of those people got washed out where they went off and forked off into Bitcoin Cash, but a lot of the Lightning people are that way now. Hodling Bitcoin is saving money in Bitcoin, is using Bitcoin, and that is a very good use of Bitcoin. It's what 99% of people use Bitcoin for. Don't feel that you have to spend it to use it. Hodling it is using it, and it's totally okay.
Love it. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today. And yeah, that's a wrap for the show. Thank you all.
Thank you for your wise words.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this has been a really, really fun. I feel like we've covered like so many different topics. But yeah, the TLDR is hodl Bitcoin. That's all you need to know. If you're jumping in at this point in the stream, that's all you need to know. Hodl Bitcoin.
Pay attention and care.
Yes. All right, everyone. Thank you, Dan. This was a pleasure. We'll see everyone next week. Yeah, we run the Top Signal every Wednesday, same time. Stay tuned for our next show. Bye, everyone.
See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.